Peter Merrick in La Jolla, California, and I am excited because I get to talk about a subject that only old men really like talking about, and that's philanthropy, giving, and legacy. Because when you're young, you can't help it, but all you think about is life is going to go forever, and you never think about what life is going to be afterwards. However, there is an afterwards, and I want to point out something. See this beautiful area behind me? I'm at the university here at UC San Diego, and the people who built these buildings, I guarantee most of them are not alive anymore. However, they invested in the future, and you and I and all these students get to benefit from it. And I have one of my great mentors. Let me share with you the individual I have with us, Gerry Rubinstein. Gerry is a luminary in my life because every time I have, I need a moral question answered, I call up Gerry. And I got to tell you, Jerry's got this really cool thing because when I ask him a question, he doesn't take it lightly. He takes a real deep breath and he gives off, and then he gives like the weight of the world is on my question. So, but I he's laughing right now, but I got to share you what's so endearing about it. Because you want to speak to someone who takes you seriously, and he literally takes everyone he talks to seriously. So before I introduce Gerry and I have Gerry share a little about himself, one of my heroes in writing and thinking is a gentleman named Martin Buber. And about 100 years ago, he wrote a book, I and Thou. Not I and it. I and it being like I can go and turn you into like something I can replace. He says you approach someone as I and thou, that they are part of the creator, part of the universe, and you give them respect. And this is what we're going to be talking about: philanthropy, giving people focus and giving people expression, and helping them on their legacy. So Gerry is one of the most gifted also insurance agents that I've ever met on my travels. And I'd like to introduce you to my good friend and mentor, Gerry Rubinstein. Gerry.
Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I'm a little humbled by that. I didn't expect that to be so nicely, but thank you very much. If you think that I'm a mentor for you, I'd like to return it back to you and say you're quite a mentor for me. We've had some very interesting discussions, but I look at your progression and your path and things you've done, and I have great respect and admiration for some of the things that you've accomplished and achieved. And I'm very, very, very glad and fortunate to be able to consider you a friend and a business associate, obviously, and someone that I could have good conversations with. And yes, Martin Buber wrote that book called I and Thou, and the nature of the I and Thou relationship is, if I look at you and consider you as thou, as that you're a person, that I have a relationship with you, compared to an it relationship where it's just something that, it's like I go to the store and I buy milk and then I just move along and I don't even know the name of the cashier or the name of the store even. I just buy the milk, I go what I want, I move on. Then that's the kind of relationship we have in life. We can either have an I-it or an I-thou relationship. And I'm very, very grateful and glad that I have an I-thou relationship with you.
Well, I before we move on, I just want to point out, COVID has been very difficult for people, but for Gerry, it's been wonderful because Gerry, you lost a person.
Oh yeah,
you look awesome.
Thanks. It's been
you look awesome. You look awesome.
I wish that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I did, and I actually I took a year really to trying to do what I did because I've lost a lot of weight. When COVID started, I went for my annual physical, and the doctor was not I wasn't very enthusiastic about what he was telling me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in real serious trouble here. I got to get myself in shape, or else I'll be in more. It'll be worse in a year or so. It'll be terrible. Already he's increasing my medications and all the rest. So I took some time and I decided, even if I don't make any money, I don't care, because health is more important than anything else when you get right down to it. And I decided to get healthy, and I've been dieting and exercising and dieting and exercising. And as you say, it's been a little while since you moved away from Canada and you saw me personally. And so, yeah, I've lost some weight and I've gotten healthy. And my doctor's now saying, go away, I don't want to speak to you for another year. Come back in a year, everything's great. Amazing, wonderful. The numbers are super. I said, thank you, good Lord, thank you. I'm healthy, and now I'm slowly, I'm going to get back into the business that I really do love, that I really do. It's the greatest business because you can really help people, and when it counts the most, when they need you the most. And I'll tell you an interesting a little side story. I had a client friend of mine. A lot of my clients end up being my friends because I like them so much. But I had a client friend of mine who recently was diagnosed with critical illness, and I had sold him a policy many years ago.
For our listeners, can you just share with them, Gerry, what critical illness is? Because in America, it's not something that's so popular.
Oh, okay. Well, it's an important component of an insurance profile for people. Everyone knows what life insurance is, but a lot of times people will suffer a critical illness. Let's say a cancer of some sort, heart attack, stroke, those kinds of illnesses, and they'll survive. They'll survive the illness. They'll survive the heart attack, but they'll be devastated financially because they have to go and get all kinds of medications or all kinds of procedures. And if they have a business, or even if not, they lose their ability to earn their income for a period of time. And so this product was designed by the insurance companies, actually by Dr. Christian Bernard, who was a the first doctor who ever did a heart replacement surgery. And
wasn't his brother was the first one, the Smart Family. He was the brother.
Maybe it was, it was a little while ago.
I'm sorry. I don't want to stop you. Go on.
No, but that's okay. In any case, he realized that the problem is the patient didn't die, the patient lived, and now they need a lot of funds to get back to where they were. So the insurance carriers came up with a product called critical illness insurance, which covers now in most cases in Canada, in most cases about 24, 25 different kinds of critical illnesses. So that if a person, God forbid, should ever have something of that kind of a disease, an illness, a cancer, heart attack, stroke, et cetera, the insurance carrier will, after proving that the person actually did have it, it's genetic, it's based on the blood, the proteins in the blood, unless it's not, there's nothing you can do to falsify it. The insurance carrier will pay out a lump sum depending on the amount that you purchased and provide it tax-free to the client. And that's exactly what happened with my friend and my client who suffered cancer, a form of cancer. And yeah, he got his money. He got his money. He got a significant amount of money because he purchased this policy from me. And I have to say that this is where we talk about I thou, but it's very true, because when I sold him this policy, he was looking like, do I really need this? So I said, I think so. I really do. Everyone should have it as part of your portfolio, and you can actually have it. There's an option you can get on this policy that if you don't have if you don't suffer a critical illness, like thankfully some people don't, if you buy this rider, this option that goes with it, you can get all your money back. So the only downside to this, and from a financial point of view, is that while your money is tied up in this product, you can't invest it to earn a return on it. And that's a minimal amount that you lose by investing in this. And then if you don't have any illness, thankfully, if you don't, then you get your money back. So there's really nothing on the downside of a significant nature. There's really nothing of the downside to prevent you or to hold you back from investing in this product and protecting yourself. And lo and behold, when it came up for renewal, because I did it on a 10-year term to keep his costs as low as possible. And in year 8, he said, I don't know if I want to do this. It's going to cost me a lot more money in year 11. I said, yes, it will, but it's the kind of thing that I had a difficult conversation with him. And I sat with him for quite a bit, and we went through it back and forth, the pros and cons, and he renewed it. He said, okay, fine, I'll renew it. And lo and behold, he needed it. And the insurance carrier at the time that I sold it to him was with Manulife Financial, and they paid out the money. And he got a serious amount of cash tax-free, which he was able to use for his business and for his family. And it kept him afloat until he could sort of like recover from the illness and get back into business and start generating revenue again. So you know, I mentioned this is the only business where you really can help people in the most profound way, for their financial security and safety. And if you don't, and you can help them directly, personally, and you can help their family when that person, you know, is no longer on the scene anymore. You can actually help their family continue on, and you can actually help that person who bought the insurance provide the legacy and the love that he wanted for his family, can make sure that they can continue on in the same way as before, as opposed to having to sell the house and move away and move to an apartment and rent something smaller or whatever. They don't have to do that. They can continue living in the way that they're accustomed to. And that's really what insurance is all about. But it's the relationship that I would have with my clients, who I consider my friends, that enables me to help them, and yet at the same time, I feel great sense of satisfaction that I've done the right thing, and that I've helped them, and it's a tremendous feeling of, it's a win-win all the way around. I'm helping them, I'm helping myself because I feel good helping them, etc. So after a while, you don't even care about the money so much. It's just those other essentials that go with it. I mean, yeah, you care about the money, obviously. I mean, you got to make a living and all that, but you're helping people. And that's what's the great joy, and covers off the frustration, sometimes the downside of working in the business. But there's nothing like it. There's nothing like helping people, especially when they need it the most. Then it's just, that's the I thou. That's what it's all about.
Well, I fully agree with you, Gerry. I've spoken to many people who their biggest regret is they didn't push hard enough for someone to actually get more. Because when it's needed, there's never enough insurance,
Right.
you know, and people
Right.
should look at it. If I'm having a good time financially and things like that, the purpose of insurance is to mitigate the risks. And unfortunately, there's always a risk. However, I think the greatest thing about our business as well is we're able to go, and I believe we're the bumblebees of society. And let me share with you why I believe that. Because we walk into different people's lives.
Yeah.
And we get to learn their businesses, we get to learn their dreams. We also look at how to mitigate those huge risks that they might face, which could be from taxes, could be death, disability, like morbidity, mortality, these things. But at the same time, we pollinate. I've met the most incredible people. I know that I could never ever be in an office like a traditional environment. I love going to different places. Now, I've dealt with some really, really successful people, and believe it or not, they're envious of me. And the reason they're envious of me is because they built themselves gilded cages. That means they have to go to the same place and deal with the same things again and again. And it doesn't matter how successful they are. I go to different realms, and I'm able to also pollinate in these different realms. And that is the beauty. And we're able to do something that you were saying, which is, I think, so important, to help people mitigate their risk. I remember my father said to me when he was alive, he says, you know, when you're having a good time, everybody wants to be at your party. It's like the things that really count is when you're not having a good time. Like, who's going to be there? And I know this, one of my great mentors, he was the first person who always got the call. Now, the reason he got the call, because he had a really long life. So the people he sold the policy to, he was around to go and actually deliver the checks.
Right.
And I've got to share with you, at the beginning of his career, it was about him selling and telling people why this was important. However, he showed me that it all changed the first check he delivered to a widow.
Yes.
He understand his role, and it now became a religion for him to actually at least show these people the importance of that. But what we're talking about today is something which is not just negative. We can also create a positive, and that is philanthropy. That's charity. So let's go and I'm going to go, like, I'm not as knowledgeable as you. However, one of
Oh,
the
yes,
things
you
that,
are. Come on, you're being very
oh,
humble and modest here, but you're very knowledgeable about the technical aspects. I'm maybe more knowledgeable about some of the ethical,
philosophical,
moral background behind it.
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. And I'll tell you what made me a nerd. I actually I looked at everything I sold and I said, well, these are contracts and you better read a contract. And, it's like, thank God for computers, because you can blow up the fine print because it's really fine.
It's small, yes.
And thank God for spreadsheets, because you can do calculations and understand what something means, not just today, tomorrow, to back up what you're doing. And, if you learn to play the pianos in a note, like on a piano, the notes, you can eventually write music. And that's like anything that you do, like you focus on. I truly believe if someone really is passionate about something, they'll understand it. But we're going to be focusing on philanthropy and philanthropy and basically in our tradition, it translates, called tzedakah, and it means justice. It's not about giving and helping other people. It's about you do well, and if it comes to you, it's your responsibility to help other people. And there's a really great story that I just want to share with you, because I think it puts it into that I read recently. And this is the opportunity for me to share it, because now I have you stuck listening to me, Gerry. So there's this really, really successful businessman, and he has this individual who gives a lot to, like, he gives his time and his energy with the poor and helping people. And this gentleman who's really successful always writes a check every time that he's approached by this guy who runs his charity. And the successful man gets a letter from the man who runs the charity saying, I need 200 rubles. And the man is really successful at this time. He's got other projects happening. So he goes and says to that man, I can't help you this time. What happens is this successful man, he ends up not being so successful. His business ventures do really bad. He loses it all. He finally goes and sees this righteous man who runs a charity, who goes and helps the poor. And he says, I don't know what happened. God has forsaken me. Everything's gone wrong. And this righteous man who runs the charity says, I'm always like studying. I'm always helping. Like I focus on things that are outside the world of money. And so God set up a bank account, my bank account, with you. And when that bank account closed, he moved it to another bank. That's and in essence, there's things outside of our awareness, but there are certain things that are in our awareness.
So
as we spoke earlier, please do. But before you do, I just want to say this. Everything that you and I benefit from is someone took the time to invest in, that you and I are benefiting today. And that leads us to philanthropy. So go with your thoughts, Gerry.
So there's two thoughts that come to my mind. The first one is about this man who had the money and he gave, and then he was in a position where he couldn't give, or he didn't give, or whatever, and then he lost it all and all the rest. There is a sentence in the prayer book that compares giving charity to a wheel, and it's like spokes on the wheel. And why do they use that analogy? Why that spokes to a wheel? Because the wheel turns. So sometimes you're at the top of the wheel and you can give and all the rest, but don't think that you're always going to be at the top, because that wheel will turn. It's round, and sometimes you'll be at the bottom and you'll lose on it, and then sometimes if you get the message, you'll turn back up. The spoke will come back up, and you'll be able to give again. So the idea of giving charitable donations to worthy causes is because God wants you to learn the lesson and to give. He wants all of us to learn that lesson to give. It's for everybody. We should all be givers. We should all be learning how to live generously and to give generously and to live a generous life by giving. And the first basic foundation on all of that, what you're saying, is appreciation for those who have been there before you. Like you mentioned, the people who invested in the school and they're not there anymore, but their names are on the wall because they got their ego stroked, that they got their name on the wall or whatever, or in the building, and so they invested, and now we are benefiting from the people who did that, whether it be in the university where you are, or in the museums where I'm living, or anything like that. People who were here before us invested, and people say, oh yeah, they spent a lot of money and they got their name on the wall, but so what? We're benefiting from their giving, and that's how we should also be thinking in our minds. If we have the capabilities and if we have the wherewithal to do that, the financial resources to do what we should, so that other people benefit. That's how the world continues on. The world continues on because of exactly that. It's those are the two things that come to my mind about the wheels turning, and one of the things that I'm at the stage now, like you, I've been in the business a little bit of time. You've been in it a little bit longer than me, obviously. But I'm at the stage now where I want to express my appreciation for the people who helped me. And I can take the talent, skill sets that I have. I may not have the resources that some of these people that are out there that can put their name on a building. I mean, I don't have those kinds of resources, but I have the skill set and the knowledge base where I can help those people who do have those resources to be able to invest in the future for someone else. And I'll tell you something. It's my giving back to the community, for those people who have helped me. It's we spoke about this once before, but why would I want to do that now? Because I can actually help. I can help not just those people, but it's helping a couple of people. It's helping the community that helped me when I needed the help, and it's also helping that person. Believe it or not, when a person gives, the feeling of satisfaction and the contentment and the level of joy, the inner joy, the peace, the understanding that they're doing something that is much bigger than themselves, and that they're achieving so much more, is so wonderful for them. You're helping them. You're helping them, and you're helping them in so many ways. Not only in so many ways, and I mean, you're helping them in this world, but you're also helping them in the spiritual world also. You're helping them profoundly, and you're helping your community. There's nothing better. There's just nothing better.
Gerry, one thing I want to add, I spent a lot of time thinking about, money and things of that nature, and I ended up writing a chapter in my last book, The King of Main Street, on like what I said the 7 principles were. And what I realized, that there's really no such thing as giving a gift, and there's no such thing as receiving a gift. And why, and the epiphany I had is I'm creating a relationship. I'm continuing a relationship, whether I'm the receiver, I'm accepting the responsibility of that. So the people who would actually give it, like you had gotten help, so you're also taking on an obligation. Unfortunately, some people don't spend the time to really think about what are my obligations. So for example, I benefited from going to public schools. I benefited by going to a university that had government funding. Like I was the beneficiary of a gift. And in essence, the second highest level of justice or charity or tzedakah is giving and not knowing who is receiving, and receiving and not knowing who's giving. And you know who the best arbitrators of that are? That's the government, right? That's what their taxes. No, but it is. And you think you don't know who you're giving, and this is really where we come in, because if people want to know where their money's going, they will come to us, and the government, and through the Income Tax Act, through the tax codes in the US, they will allow you to direct that money that they would have taken from you anyway, and you can get that satisfaction. And I always think about, because the story you shared, how you want to benefit other people who helped you to pass it on. one of my heroes in philanthropy, who I think is greater than anybody who's ever lived before, is Andrew Carnegie. And I've told this story before. Andrew Carnegie was the wealthiest man in the world, and he only gave like $10 million away of his money. And we're going to say that he'd be equivalent to be worth $500 billion today, if $1 trillion with his business. And he wrote this essay called The Gospel of Wealth. And in it, he laid out what the best way to give. And he said to consciously give. To consciously give while you're here. Because he said he basically alludes to the 80-20 rule, saying, I just happened to be the one, and if it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else. So I can either give it away, give it to my family, which I can destroy them because they won't know what to do with it. It's like a moving train going 100 miles an hour, and I'm just going to give it to them. It's going to, and you and I have seen it. I've seen people who've inherited $1 billion. I know one person who inherited $1 billion. Basically, everybody who's ever been around him is a sycophant. They're trying to get a free lunch, and he developed a really bad cocaine problem, right? Because what would you do? It's like everything he ever wanted was actually available, and what his grandparents did to get him there, he has life experience to actually deal with it. So it's sort of like the yin and the yang, like whatever you receive, you also lose something, and I think that's the brilliance of the universe, of God, whatever you call it. It's like if you get something, you have to, Jerry's much more observant than I am. And I remember one time that Gerry went to the men's room, and he came out and he says a prayer, and he's very grateful that it works, right? There's a prayer for that, right?
Yes,
And at
there
that
is.
point, being young and hubris and everything, I'm thinking, oh, that's sort of crazy, whatever. No, when I actually was anemic and they had to do internal surgery and I had my own problems, I wanted to learn that prayer. I learned that prayer because these little things in life that we take for granted, we have to actually show appreciation for. So getting back to
So before you
Andrew
get back,
Carnegie, yeah,
before you get back, I just want to say that I learned that prayer under similar circumstances when my father had his heart attack, and he was in the
yep,
hospital. And he was he was one of the first people in the Montreal hospital that was able to get the blood thinner. That was when the blood thinner agent was just on the market the first time, and he was the
yep.
first one in the hospital that got it, and it saved his life. And if you look at the words in that particular prayer, that's when I started looking at that word.
Can you
and said, "Oh,
translate? Can you translate the prayer?
yeah, I mean, it's thank you, God, for creating the body with all the orifices that everything opens and closes at the proper time and the right amount and all the rest. So whether it be your heart valves or your windpipe or your esophagus or any other part of your body that it's working properly, it's a miracle, really, when you think about it. And you thank God
For
that
sure.
it's working properly, that all the functions work properly. Your nose, your mouth, your ears, and things in your heart, your veins, your everything, right, and all the other portions of your body. You thank God that it's working properly, and it's like everything. You don't realize it until you actually something goes wrong. I said, "Oh my, what's this all about?" Right? And with my father, that's what happened. And I remember once a couple of years afterwards, I'd come out of the washroom and I was saying this prayer, and someone was laughing at me, and and I looked at him and said, "Why are you laughing? You don't realize the power of this prayer. Like you don't realize that you're thanking God that everything worked correctly. You better hope that everything works correctly, because if it doesn't, you'll be in trouble. You'll be on your hands and knees
Perspective.
asking for air."
It's perspective, because in essence, Gerry, I was probably the guy laughing at you, but actually I had a serious health scare 2 years ago.
Right.
And then for 7 weeks, I don't even want to talk about it because it's not something you talk about, but I got to tell you, things weren't working properly.
Right.
And now I appreciate everything because I know what it felt like, and I had a preview of coming events.
Right. Right.
I just want to move us back to
Okay.
Andrew Carnegie with what he said, and it goes back, and I'm going to bring it back to you and the people who helped you. So the one way he looked at giving is you could give it to your children and destroy them. He also said you have to look at the child and what their capabilities are, because, for example, someone who was a lawyer at a Wall Street firm needs different resources than, let's say, a developmentally disabled child. But he says you don't give them too much that it's going to destroy them from actually discovering who they are themselves. And that could be the cruelest thing you perpetrate on a child. He said the second way is to give it when you're gone. And he said, well, he compares those individuals to being a steer. So a steer, different than a bull, has been like cut, right? It had a vasectomy,
right.
had like, so he says the difference, he says the similarities between a miser and a steer and the value to society is only when they're dead. Because in essence, you're not going to eat the meat of a steer and you're not going to get the benefit of the money from a miser until they're gone. And he said, if those people could, so the first group, he said, they're family vanity. They think their kids are going to carry on the legacy. Right. And I had a friend who wrote a book called From Short Sleeves to Short Sleeves, meaning that the manual labor makes the money. And then within like 3 generations, they're back to manual labor. They've lost it. And it's called in Kabbalah, they call it the bread of shame. You cannot keep what you have not rightfully earned, right?
Right.
So you have to work for it. So for whatever you gain, Emerson has an essay called Compensation. It's very similar to the bread of shame. Whatever you gain, you will also lose. This is where the appreciation comes. This is why you have to be thankful while you have it. So the second way is I give it, buildings are named after I'm dead, so I've never benefited from it. So the first one is vanity, give to my children. Second one, I would have taken it with me if I could have, right? And the third way is the benefit from seeing what's come out of it. And going back to Andrew Carnegie, he wrote this essay, The Gospel of Wealth, in 1898. We didn't know, no one knew how rich he was. He had only given away about $10 million. And when he sold his business, he was worth the equivalent in 2021 to about $500 billion. So he was wealthier than any of the wealthiest people that we know of right now. So what he did is he wrote that essay, The Gospel of Wealth, and in it, what he said is there's 3 ways to give money. The first one is to give to family members, and he talks about how it would destroy the children. He says it's all got to do with family vanity. That's what he talks about, and that vanity destroys. That people might not know the story of Narcissus, but what Narcissus does is he falls right into his subconscious by staring at the water. He ends up falling into the water because he's reflection, and he dies. And basically, it's like we've become so self-absorbed, and we want our children to live out our dreams and things, and that could be the worst thing. So he said that would only be terrible for the children. Number 2, he talks about giving it when we're dead, and we mentioned about the steer and the miser. They're only value to society when they're dead because they don't give anything while they're alive. And he said if those people could take it, they would, but they can't. So now they give it. And he said, well, that's, both of them are very selfish and bad. And he said, the greatest growth is going to come from actually administer this gift, this wealth that the universe, that God has given you, and see the benefits of it while you're here. Now, this leads back exactly to what you were sharing earlier with me, Gerry, that you want to take the skill sets that you've been endowed with the learnings that you've acquired in your life to help people, guide them to philanthropy so they can actually see the benefits while they're here. Now, when he sold his company and became the wealthiest man in the world, because, and he could have been wealthier because Morgan said the company was so great, he would have even paid more. Can you imagine? That being said, when he was a child, and he came from Scotland as a poor immigrant kid, he talks about how there was a really wealthy guy who had a library in his estate that he allowed like poor boys like him to go and read and study. And that was so important to him. So you know what his focus was? He opened over 2,000 libraries around the world.
Beautiful.
And in addition to that, he believed teaching was so important. He actually created research centers and the first teachers pension fund, because he believed that these people who had helped him, who'd given the most important tools, not just it's sort of like not just a fish, but the fishing rod and the
Right.
skills to
Right.
fish. And so what he did is, between the time he sold his company in 1901 to the time he died in 1919, he gave 95% of his money away.
Wow.
He
Significant.
gave it. It was huge. And this is such a lesson, because we all heard in our business about the pledge. All these billionaires are committing to give half their money away, either alive or dead, and everyone attributes, oh, that's Bill Gates. Bill Gates read Andrew Carnegie's essay, because one of my favorite mythologists, Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey, said it's all old wine in new bottles. There's nothing new in the world. It's just the packaging of it. And the only thing not known is the history not studied. So let's continue,
Okay.
Gerry, on what you want to accomplish and what you like, how you plan to offer your skill set out on philanthropy.
Okay, that's a
So
really good
let
question.
me ask one question. 10 years from now, Gerry, you've done it. You've created this vehicle to help achieve to help people achieve their philanthropy goals. What is the end result?
That's a really good
What
question.
does it look like?
So,
We'll take a pause while you do it. You come to it.
yeah. So, in particular, right now, I don't know how it'll look in 10 years' time. I know where I'm going to start. I know where I'm going to start, but where it takes me down the road in time, I don't know where that will be. But I know that in the community in which I live, there's a significant need for um, the two schools and the community center for a particular section of the community in the suburb of Montreal where I live. And the leader is a very dynamic, visionary type of person, but he doesn't have the knowledgeable skill set that I would have, and that my team of people that I associate with that would help me have, to enable him to raise the funds. He needs huge amounts of funds to be able to build the buildings, or if not build them, then buy them, so that he could move his organization forward. And that's going to take a little bit of time. And I went to him and I said, I'll help you with this. I want to help you with this. I'm very motivated to help you with this, because I feel very close to this community, especially to the type of community it is, and my background that fits very nicely with it. And so I want to help. I want to have it's a little bit of a selfish feeling, if you want to use it that way, because it's for me to feel good about doing what I'm doing. And he actually offered me money to help him. I said, not a penny. I wouldn't take a penny. I would not even for a tax receipt purposes. I wouldn't take anything. I want to do this for me, so that I can actually give back to the kind of community that helped me in my advancement, helped me and my family. So I wouldn't take any. There's no way I wouldn't consider it. If you'd offer it to me, I'd walk away. I wouldn't do it. So he knows not to offer it to me. But and where would I, once, if I hope that I'm going to be very successful. I hope that I'm going to be very successful in terms of helping other people share their wealth to further the community. This is a landmark, pivotal project. It's a pillar. It would be a pillar of the community for the next 20, 30, 40 years going forward. And I would have some kind, I didn't want my name up on the wall. I don't need my name up on the wall. I'm doing this just so that I would have the sense that I helped. I didn't do it all, obviously, but I helped create something of everlasting value so that when I'm done my time here, honestly, when I'm done my time here, whatever that may be, I'll be able to go meet my maker and say, okay, I'm ready to be judged, and whatever the things that I've done, I'm going to say it's true. I can't deny it. There's no fooling. There's no fooling the Creator. He knows everything. But have mercy on me, because look what I did for you. Look what I did, and I really did it for you, because I didn't take anything from it except the pleasure, the sense of pleasure that I got from doing it. And I'm hoping that that would enable me to say, and he'll say, okay, come on in, welcome, as opposed to go downstairs and you're going to be punished anyway. I'm not looking forward to that component, but so I'm hoping that that's really my motivation for doing it, and where I'm going to be in 10 years time. If I'm still alive, I'll probably be I told this community leader, I said, just leave me one chair and a table and place where I could sit and be in your community and learn and do the things that I want to do, so that when my time is up, that'll be my place. That's what it's all about, right? So in 10 years, I don't know if it's 10 years, it could be 20. Well, I don't know if I'll be here, but however long it is, that's what it is, and that's what I'm going to do, you know. So, but and I don't know. I know that's where my starting point is, and how it unfolds, we'll have to see, right? But that's where my orientation is. That's my goal, my starting point, and that's where I want to end up. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, and I just say it made me think of something which actually put things in very perspective for myself. My father would give to our community, and it was very important to him because he was born at a time where his parents were immigrants, and they came from 21 siblings, and only 5 came over to North America. And my father was a change of life baby, and he was born in 1939. So it must have been horrific, that house, because they lost well over 100 people that they knew, like immediate family members.
Right.
So my father would always give to the charities that were important to him. And he'd always give to his kids, but he was a workaholic. He was a tax accountant. And when he was really sick and he had a brain tumor, someone asked him, and I was there, I didn't ask him the question. He said, Marvin, now that you're no longer going to be practicing accountant, what do you want to do? And this is something that was so painful to hear, because it put so much in perspective of my father to me. He never felt he had time. He never felt he was successful enough. So he said, and this is what he said, he always wanted to go and, work for these charities for free to help them, because they were so important to his family, his identity, to my family's identity. And at that point, the money bee was a surrogate for him. He was he had traded his life energy to go and give to these charities. So he would give $10,000 to a charity asked, to these charities at any given time. But he never felt he was successful enough, or he could really do something. And that being said, my father passed away at 59. So he was a young man. And this is what he, in the back of his mind, this is what he really wanted to do. And I can say this is really what he wanted to do, because he knew he was dying. And this is what he said he wanted to do. And he never got to do it, but it put it in the perspective to me that, he would send us on trips. He would always make sure we were taken care of. He'd always give to the things that were important. And he was always working. And I realized to him, he didn't know how to communicate these things were important to him. So the money was a surrogate for him. It was like a marker.
That's right.
And I believe that, with your skill set, along with your theological skill set, along with your technical skill set, you could help these people like my father realize that and see the benefit, because it was at the end of his life. See, this is how depressing it was to me, because to realize that when my father wasn't there, but I actually was at camp, or I was traveling, or I was going to school, and he was not available. because he never felt he was successful enough, wealthy enough to actually be there to see the benefits. He did the best he could. And I think the skill set that you bring with this charity and with this foundation that you're working on is allowing these people to see the benefits, because that's why when I share with you the Andrew Carnegie model, is my father never got to actually be Andrew Carnegie, where he was able to now give back before he left. So the truth is, I wish he didn't die, because that puts a lot of pressure on me, because I have to do the work of two people now, right? No, I'm joking. But you understand what I'm saying. Like, so that's where my attraction, because Andrew Carnegie to me gave me the words, because like it was at the end that I find out everything he was doing is not what he wanted to do. And the truth is, Gerry, you're a grandfather now, right? You want the world to like when you go and give yourself to these charities, it's also a selfishness, because you want the world to be as good or better than it was when you found it for your grandkids. And in essence, and that is a powerful thing, because when you give to something that you're never going to benefit from, it's like planting a seed and knowing that you'll never be there to actually see it blossom, but you are making that investment because it's important that, let's say, the people you care about, the causes you think are important, that someone else is going to benefit from it. And in that way, you live. And maybe you can share some philosophical thought about this, but there's a power about, if we do really good deeds, people tell our story. And I think older people, the way I became successful, Gerry, is I early on realized that I like listening to older people all the time, because like I love knowledge, and they live. And the way I became successful is these really successful businessmen, mostly men, sometimes women, would give me unsolicited advice. They would just give me, people would pay these people a fortune for this knowledge. Like they were like luminaries, and they would give me unsolicited advice. And that actually inspired me to understand the power of story, because what they were really doing is they say, tell my story. Like I now see there will be a day that I'm not here. The son was here before me. He'll be there after me. And I want some record that I was here. And I really believe that if we give while we're here of our time, of our money, we have a better chance to live beyond. Because I know one thing, and I don't know, like I'm the beneficiary of, let's say, my great-great-grandparents. I don't know who they are. Do you know who your great-great-great-great-grandparents are? I do have a picture of my great-grandfather, and he's got like a big hat, like a hat, the one with the beards. And I got that. That's like, looks real, but I don't even like, I think I know his name. I think his name was Barack Waldman. I think I know his name, but I don't know. And I don't know his story. I don't know what his dreams were. I don't know anything. And I think one of the great things about society right now, we can now be conscious. But Gerry, you know what I want to ask you? Because I know you got the answer.
Go ahead.
In the Middle Ages, when our community had nothing, the living will. What was the living will?
When they had nothing, you mean it in the sense of the material sense of physical.
Material, they had nothing, but it became a thing where they would write. When they would write their living will, and it wasn't my living will as if I become disabled, or like this is how I want my affairs dealt with. It was something much more fundamental.
Much more different. So what's fascinating is in history, whether they lived, the ones who lived in Eastern Europe or the ones who lived in the Middle East, they had a similar cultural and a similar mindset. That some of them, there were periods of great poverty that they didn't have material sustenance, and yet they survived somehow. And they survived only because they had to. That's what drove community to come together and unite and help each other. And they recognized their code of value system that would sustain them. And they developed over the centuries, in the time that they were living in Eastern Europe and also in the Middle East. They developed tremendous scholarship and erudition in the legal and spiritual code from the Bible that was given, that was translated, that was transmitted down to them from their ancestors, their grandfathers, their great grandfathers, whatever, kept on being transmitted from father to son to son to son, etc., down the generation. And they wrote their commentary on this, and that became the whole cultural mindset, whether it be in Eastern Europe or whether it be in the Middle East, in the Spain, Portugal, Italy, all the other, Iran, Iraq. It became the code of life that we try and aspire to their level. What became very clear was that it wasn't the physical sustenance and the fancy cars or fancy food or fancy castles or whatever that was a value at all. What became a value was the spiritual component of their life and their ability to live one with the other in peace and harmony as best as possible, and helping each other as best as possible, as much as possible. And that was imbued in us. That became imbued in our DNA. So
there's two fundamental things in the Middle Ages. It said these people didn't have anything. So what they did is they had to come to terms that they were going to die. So they had to say it before they were gone. And they had to actually say, this is what I learned, and have an opinion that it had value, to communicate it to those I loved, whether it's a community or individuals. Talking about this became very popular in the Middle Ages, especially when the Black Plague, all that.
So the living will is all about, really and truthfully, the living will is all about how the father or the grandfather would want his children to live, because they like I said, they didn't have physical or material things to give over to their children. They didn't have it. They were impoverished. They lived an impoverished lifestyle. But what they did have was the value system that they wanted to give over to the children, that the children continue living that kind of a lifestyle, because that was the right lifestyle. That was the correct lifestyle. Even if it meant that they would still be impoverished, they wanted them to continue living the correct lifestyle that they needed to live to continue going forward in the generation. I'll tell you a story about one of the greatest halachic decisors in his time. One of the great legal minds. He was so poor. He was so poor. He didn't even have paper. He couldn't get paper. So what he did was, he had ink. You can get ink on a quill, and he would write his legal decisions on the walls of his house. And his house that had all his brilliant analysis and legal decisions written in ink on the walls of his house. That's how he lived, because that was the most important thing, and that's how he passed on his value system to his children. They saw it. So it's hard to understand that. It's hard to envision that, because we're just so far removed from all of that we just can't imagine that. But in truth, that's beauty. That's phenomenal. That's just something beyond our ability. It's an extremely high level of scholarship and transmission of a value system of what's real, what's really important too.
So I'll share with you what I'm taking from this discussion. And I'm a slow guy, so it took me a while to actually bring it. It's not about, well, I catch things after they happen. So this is what I think the essence of our conversation is, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, we might give something that might make a building. It might help cure cancer, cure some ill in the world, help a child. But it all started off with an idea that we wanted to do better, and we directed it with intent. We infused it with intent. So what, for example, you were helped by people who had the intent that they wanted to pass on a lifestyle, a benefit to a young, and one of the beneficiaries was a young Gerry Rubinstein. And now you want to pass on that same thing. So one of the things and I like turning to physics, like a thought and a thing are made of the same thing. It's moving energy.
Right.
It's just
Right.
a thing. It's just a very slow moving, much more slow moving energy.
Right.
But a thought and a thing are the same, and they come from the same place. And in essence, the skill set that you're going to bring is you're going to help these people figure out what their intent is and slow it down so they can manifest it in physical, five-sensical reality. But it starts with a thought. And I think it's so beautiful that we were talking about the living will, because that's the first place to start. Is if someone hasn't done a living will, it's more valuable to me than a financial plan, because what do you want to be said about you? Who do you want, who after you can no longer change, like take the eraser and change things, what is going to be the final thing? I want to share with you something that happened to me about was it 3 years ago? Could have been 4 years ago. A gentleman, his name's Durka, he wrote this beautiful piece on me, an investment executive, about my 25-year-old career. And he took out all the blemishes. So I'm reading it and I say, this guy is awesome, man. Like, that's all true what he put in there. But it's like, when you take that out and those years and whatever, it's like, wow, this guy's had a phenomenal life. Not talking about like, it's like when one door closes, the other one opens. Like, I make the joke that no one tells you about the bloody hallway in between, right?
Right.
He took that all out. It just looked
Right.
like he went, he was a perfect ship. He went from one port to the next. It didn't think, it was so beautiful. And I ended up having people who I hadn't heard from in years. They were contacting me and they had read it, and it was, it was great. I actually looked at what he did and I said, I felt so great. I'm going to go and tell these people while they're alive how great they are. So I started writing professional obituaries.
Oh my
Not
God.
actually saying the person was dead, but I'll say about like how Gerry did this and this. And I did over 200 of them, and I wish I had more time to do it. But since I had such great satisfaction, it's sort of like telling people what they meant while they're there.
Yeah.
And that's what I think philanthropy is as well, especially giving it while we're alive, because it's the same thing. It's like, I did a video the other day where I wrote my book, The King of Main Street. Do you got your copy, Gerry? No.
Yeah. Sure.
So one of the most beautiful things that happened, I read about things, and I benefited from my own father when he was really ill. He took the time to tell me what he thought of me. So I miss him. However, I had that, that calming thing that I actually I got to relate to my father, and I got to know what he thought. So I sent out my book to some of the most successful people walking on this planet. And there was something in the book, because I read all these books on aging, principally male aging, and all these really successful people. I mean, like these people, some of them are like multi-billionaires. And it was very sad that many of them, when they were telling their stories, they never had that conversation with their dad. So it didn't really matter how accomplished they were. That was like a major regret,
Right.
that that was never said to them. And they would sometimes say, well, that's just the way it was, or I had butted heads with my dad. But the question I always had in my mind, well, was your dad still married to your mom like all those years? And he said, yeah, yes. Was he always there? Like, did he go to your graduations? Yes. Like, so he never voiced it,
Right.
but he
Right.
loved it. It's like, maybe it was your mother an easy woman to live with. He said no. I said, so why do you think he stayed? Because of you. He loved you. But my whole point is about the philanthropy and doing it while you're here and seeing the benefit. It's telling people that this is important, not like saying, oh, well, we're all getting together to read the legal will. Oh, I didn't know that he really cared about that school. I
Yeah.
had no idea about it, or what
Right.
meaningful, or how this person had helped him, and that's why he wanted to give back. I never knew that. It's just like $10 million went to this school, and what's his connection? You know what it
Right.
reminds me of?
What?
What
What?
was Citizen Kane, the best movie ever? And he's saying snowball, snowball, snowball. And nobody knows, like the reporter, for those of you who don't know, it's Orson Welles' great movie. And it's about this super wealthy guy. They think it was Hearst who
Right.
owned all these newspapers.
Right.
And he dies alone. And all he says is snowball, snowball. And this reporter searches what snowball. What snowball is the little boy. The movie starts off, he's on a sled and he's just having fun. He's a child and he gets taken off to New York and he becomes a gentleman, and he gets, like, his youth is ripped away from him. And at the end of the movie, after he's died, the movie's ending and the man has died, and they're saying, well, we'll never know what snowball is. They're in this big warehouse and they're now burning stuff that belonged to him. And you know what? They take the sled, and on the sled it says snowball, and then it goes into the furnace. And that is what happens when someone doesn't communicate it while they're alive. So I believe the gift that you and I bring to successful business owners or people who've done well is we're able to help them communicate it when they're alive. What you're doing is you're working on the philanthropy part. My expertise is actually releasing all that money. I prep businesses, I
Oh, I
pull
see.
them out,
Right.
I pull their money out while they're alive. I help them get rid of not transition out of their businesses, and now they can actually make their last third of their life, I believe, the most productive, because not only do they have the money to do things, they have something much greater, which you mentioned, Gerry, and that's wisdom. They now
Yeah.
know why things are the way they should be.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that the wisdom, they say that, well, I think it was Mark Twain that says wisdom is lost on the young, right? Because they don't know what it is. They don't know what wisdom is. It's only after you've been through a whole series of experiences that you gain perspective, you gain wisdom. You've gone through the ups and the downs. You've seen things that happen that you don't like, that you do like, and you figure out how to deal with stuff. And that's when you start really to get some perspective and some wisdom. And then you can start saying, okay, now what am I going to do with what I have? What am I going to do? And um, if you've been brought up with a sense that you can give more to people, to organizations, so that other people can have, if you've been brought up with that, because a lot of people aren't, a lot of people don't have that, but if they do have that sense, if that sense can be ignited from within by someone from without, someone outside can ignite the flame within, the little spark that's inside, and so you could feel even better about who you are and what you've done and everything you've experienced by giving, by living generously and giving generously, um, then you've done a tremendous good for the world, and for that person as well, for that person individually and for the world at large. And that's the skill set that's required. It's not so simple to do, but again, I'm going to bring it back to what you said about the Martin Buber philosophy of I thou. If you could touch that person, if you can have an I thou relationship with them and touch that person, understand who he is or who she is, and get into their mindset a little and say, okay, I can help you feel even better. I can help you give even more. I can help you feel something that resonates deeply within inside you so that you feel that you're doing the right thing, and you are doing the right thing. You are achieving huge accomplishments in not only for that person's life, but also for countless, who knows how many generations down the road. I mean, you've got trees behind you, and you're recording this conversation, and I guarantee you that those trees were planted before you and I were born by someone who'd be maybe 2 generations before, 3 generations before, right? We don't know, and yet someone spoke to them to be able to say, do that, plant that now. You won't see it, but we'll appreciate it.
Jerry, I want to share with you, the university was formed the year I was born. So I guarantee you these trees were not planted before you were born.
Okay, then. So then, fair enough.
I love you. You know where I want to end it, Jerry? One of the most wisest things that anyone ever taught me in sales was what you once said to me about you were working for a guy who turned to you and said, you're not going to listen. And I want you to tell that story. That's how I want to end. I want to end that story because that is the all-time wisdom. And this guy here, and you know what the beautiful thing is? Sometimes we don't know where wisdom comes from, because sometimes when people give it, they don't even realize they're giving it. And I want to leave on this. This is how
I started working in a company, and I was before I got into the life insurance business and even thinking about philanthropy. I was working as an executive recruiter, and I didn't know this. I didn't have the skill set for it at the time, and so the person who hired me was going to train me. And he brought 3 people on board. He said, we're going to train the 3 of you, and you're going to be the next wave in our company. And that's why we wanted to learn how to become executive recruiters, because the guys that he had in his company were very serious, accomplished professionals, and they were making some very good money at the time. And we thought, we'll be the next wave. We'll be the next guys in this company. We'll be, at the time we were younger. At the time we said, well, we'll make a lot of money and we'll be really good. Anyway, God had other plans. But anyway, so what he said was, I'm going to teach you how to do this. You see these guys here, these guys that are making like $1 million a year, and those were the days when $1 million was serious money, right? And he said, you see these guys making $1 million a year. I taught them. They came in like you. They didn't know anything. But I taught them. They listened, they learned, and and then they grew into it themselves, and through their own talents and skill sets, they made themselves into the top tier guys in the business. So, okay, and now we're going to do that with you guys. And great, I'm all in. And the first thing he said to me is, you know what? You're not going to listen to what I'm going to say. I created these guys from like the beginning. They didn't know but you're not going to listen to me. You're not going to listen to me. It's human nature. I get it. So I'm going to make you suffer. And you're going to go out and you're going to be on the phone. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make all kinds of things. You're going to say all the wrong things. You're not going to listen properly. You're not going to answer the questions properly. You're not going to know how to handle objections. You're not going to learn how to sell. And you don't know how to sell until I teach you how. You don't know how. It's a true story. And he was right. I said, no, but I thought to myself, who the hell is this guy thinking about that? What is he thinking? He's going to tell me that. And it turns out that he was right. He truly, really was right. We all come back after like hours on the phone and we said, oh my God, oh man, this is. So now I'm going to teach you how to sell. Now I'm going to teach you what to say. When they say this, they counter with an objection, you answer back this way. When they say that, you answer back this way. I'm going to be your coach, like a boxer in a boxing match. You're the boxer, but I'm your corner guy, and I'm going to tell you jab, lift jab, uppercut, defend, whatever, move your hands up, keep your way, cover yourself up. I'm going to teach you all of those tricks so that you know how to defend yourself and you know how to answer back and you know how to fight back, and then you'll be victorious. And eventually, he was right. He was right. We had to learn it the hard way because our pride got in the way. And we said, I'm not losing to him. Who the hell does he think he is? And he was right. We had to learn it the hard way. And we learned. The 3 of us learned. And we became the best friends at the time because we all went through this horrible boot camp. It was awful. But he knew what he was talking about. And he knew what he was talking about anyway. So that was, I told you that story.
Well, Gerry, that story had such an impact on me. I put that in my book, where the mentor character turns to the younger guy, asks for help, and And he says, I could tell you what to do, but you're not going to listen. You're going to have to go out there, get beat up by life. And then if you have the tenacity to get up again, then you might have the tenacity to come back to me. And then you might listen.
That's
And I
exactly
remember
it.
putting that in the book, but I remember like the fact that you had actually shared that with me. And I thought, that is so true. Like I've had my kids who would like, they would like, I know how it's done, and they don't want to listen.
That's
And they got to go up a life. And it's like a lot of like people don't realize that older people were once young. Like it's a self-interest that we want to think that we're the first persons to ever experience it. But you want to know something? Love old people. Like there'd be no younger people if older people didn't know love, right? Because they wouldn't have babies. Like
Right.
all this stuff. Like there's nothing that hasn't been done before. And what I'm hoping for, and this is what my dream is. My dream is that that older people get initiated into eldership, because there's been such little training, such little, because people have never lived this long before. Like I like quoting a stat that I remember when I read it, it blew my mind, that demographers think that over the last 200,000 years of Homo sapiens, the wise ape, there's been 108 billion people who've walked, 60,000 generations. And out of that 108 billion people, they're figuring that about 750 million of them have lived beyond the age of 65. Because when Bismarck came up with old age, the idea in the 1880s, only 1% of the population ever lived to 65, right?
Yeah, so he could say,
but
we could have an old age pension plan. No worries, only 1% make it. What's the problem?
Yeah, it's like that's nothing. But getting back to that 750 million people, 2/3 of those people who've lived there, 500,000 of the 750 million, are alive today.
Right.
And very few people have been exposed to elders. It's easy to become a senior. You live long enough, your age, chronological age. But have you done the work? And I truly believe part of the work, and this is going back to Carl Jung, is the first half is acquisition, the second half is distribution.
That's right.
You come with nothing, you leave with nothing, right? You get, if you're lucky, you get a shroud. That's it.
So
but you don't get it. But that's
the ancient used to say this. When you're born in the world, the baby's born in, his hands are they're clenched. They're clenched, right? They're clenched because the baby, he's like you said, acquisition. It's like I want, give me. I want to grab hold onto the world. I want to grab everything I can get. But after 120 years of living in this world, your hands don't clench anymore. You give up, you let go. Distribution. So as you get older, you start opening your hands. You don't need to clench and grab and all this. You want to give, and that's when we finally start realizing our greatness is that we can give, and by giving, we're actually helping going on. It's the greatest gift we have. It's the greatest gift we have.
And we learned that, because only by helping people, I know that I became a much better planner, consultant when I taught and I started writing. I learned. It's only through that. And one of the most powerful things, and I wasn't even conscious of it. The second time around, I would become conscious of it. But when I was teaching financial planning in university back in Toronto, I connected with I taught maybe over 300 people. And I was in a transition in my life. My life had blown up, and I took teaching not because I wanted to be a teacher, just because I had to pay the bills. Right. So I wasn't looking to I'm high and mighty. Actually, me, when I was an instructor, I was probably the lowest that I'd been. My ego had been completely demolished, because whoever I thought I was. The most gratifying thing I get is when I have students, and now they're mid-management, senior management at the banks, and there's hundreds of them. It's like many of them went to BMO, they went to Scotia, they went, they're all, and they're in their mid-30s. They actually say to when I come in, he was like my favorite prof.
No,
There's like, no, but it's like, and the reason I was probably good is because I was learning, because I wanted to get out of the hell that I was in, because I had a good practice and I was on the verge of bankruptcy, and I was fortunate that I had the gift of the gab and I could write, and that's why they hired me. And I had some designations, but it's not like I wanted to be there. I was learning like they, and I wanted to get out, and I wanted to learn, and I was there learning just as much as they were learning, and they could see that. But that is so empowering that when people say, he helped me, boom. And that's really what people want. I think the most powerful thing that anybody ever has is somebody goes and looks at you saying, Gerry helped me when I needed help. And I think that is something that's why you want to be to experience that. And that's a selfish feeling. I truly believe that Mother Teresa wasn't truly altruistic. She loved people to say, Mother, you're so holy, because in essence, people feed off of that. You do something nice for me, if I'm a Mensch, I want to do something equally nice. And you know what ends up happening? Our boats all rise because the level of the water is rising together. You want to outdo me, I want to outdo you, and guess what? We do better, the community better, and we want more and more people to join in the game, and we want it to be an infinite game. And I think what I'd like to close on is there's two ways to look at the world. It's a finite game. I get to take everything that's win-lose, or it's an infinite game where I want to invite more and more players. And that is, I got to be in the game of life because other people, whether consciously or unconsciously, invited me. And now I want to make it so that other people can get the most out of the game, the infinite game, which is life.
Good for you.
So are there any final thoughts? Any final thoughts, Gerry?
Any final thoughts?
Come on, deep thought. Pressure.
I'll tell you something. I really appreciate what you've done and what you said. And thank you very much. It's very complimentary that you think highly of me, and I'm very.
Well, Gerry, it's true. You're Gerry. Gerry, you're my rabbi. Honestly, I call you up. I'm saying I don't belong to a shul. Gerry Rubinstein. He's my rabbi. I'm going to ask him, and I have to just say this because I'm going to put this in. Jerry's my rabbi. I call him up with a deep question. Instead of giving me the answer, he gives like the real deep breath. And then he speaks. It's like he sighs, it's like serious stuff we're talking about. And it's just little old me.
So just little old you. What are you talking about? Every single individual, including yourself, just little old you. You have the soul of God inside of you. We all do. So we have to enhance that. So let me give you one example of a person who I heard the story. I haven't seen it personally. I haven't seen it by myself, but I've heard it said over. Have I? Did he tell me what he does? No, he told me. He told me this is what he does. Sorry. This was many years ago now. He wanted to inculcate in his children a sense of gratitude because he felt that if they would have a sense of gratitude of the things that are going on in the world, as at a young age, they would grow up and they would be much more emotionally balanced, confident, and assured, and will be able to live a life of generosity. So he went, how am I going to do this? How am I going to inculcate in my children a sense of gratitude? And he had a large family, 5 children or whatever, and he wasn't the wealthiest person in the world, but he and his wife, every week, they would keep a log of what they consume, how many bottles of milk, how many pounds of meat and chicken and bread and all that kind of stuff. They would keep a log on it. And on a Saturday night at the end of the week, because the weeks would start Sunday morning, right? So on Saturday night at the end of the week, they would review the log together. They'd say with their children, look, so this week we had 3 boxes of cereal that we ate, and we had 3 packages of cheese that we ate, and we went through, and 2 bottles of milk that we went through, and all the rest. And they would say, and we have to thank mommy and daddy for buying it and for cooking the food and all this. Thank you very much. Because you're young kids, you have to say thank you, mommy and daddy, for all the work that you went out to go and buy the material, and that you have a job, and that you bought it and you made it for us and all the rest. And at the same time, you have to say thank you, God, for providing for us so that we could do all of these things. And I looked at him, and he said, "He did this every week." I mean, like every week, every Saturday night, they would review what had been consumed and say thank you to your parents, thank you to God. So I was stunned, because I never thought I could never possibly do something like that. But he was a very, very special individual. He really was. And I believe that he did it. I believe he did it, because I checked. I knew who his father was, and I asked his father, "Is this really true?" Yeah, it's written on the wall. They write it down on the wall, and every morning, every Saturday night, they go through what was consumed, and then they have a whole diary of a whole year, and they said, "This is what happened this year." And it's like, holy smokes, this guy is, and his children are the most beautiful children you could ever possibly imagine. To say thank you. So we have to inculcate this idea of appreciation from a young age. And when we do, we have to thank the people who inculcated even that idea into our heads, so we can say thank you to them. We can say thank you to the people who helped us. There's no shame in saying thank you to people who help you. They're actually helping you become better and bigger and stronger. And you say thank you for that, so that you can continue and do the same thing for other people. And it just, as you expand your horizon, it gets more than just your world. It's not just your immediate family. It takes on a bigger dimension, such that people will end up giving to the schools and to the universities. And so like you get involved in charitable giving, and so do I. It goes to making your community a better place, a bigger place, a safer place, a holier place, a place where we all can continue to give and to be the kind of people that we need to be. And that's so if you're thanking me, it's me thanking you back. I mean, for this opportunity to share stories with you, and remember, I remember that guy. I remember that sales guy. Oh.
Well, Gerry, you've been great, and I look forward to letting other people participate in our conversation, because I think really for me, what the value of this conversation is it's two people who like each other, having a good conversation. And really what true philanthropy is, it's getting other people involved in that active conversation and getting more people involved.
Well,
and I mentioned earlier, the infinite game is, it's not about spiking the ball and getting a point. It's about volleying and getting more and more people to participate.
Right.
And Gerry, you've been awesome.
Thank you, Peter.
And I look forward. I'm going to be doing a further podcast, and I just want to leave you with this, and then we're going to get going. Is I've spent a lot of time the last year figuring out, what do I want my podcast to be, and I decided I want to go to people and ask them, who helped you? Did you thank them? If you didn't thank them, what would you have liked to say? If you did thank them, what did you say? And how are you passing it on? Because I think that is something that I've been watching videos on YouTube on finance and buying homes and all that stuff. And it's all telling me what to do, but it's not telling me who these people are.
Right.
And for me, I guess because it comes with age, that's what interests me. And I think that's really what interests younger people too. They want to know what someone saw and what motivated them, rather than what they see, like what they see, the external, like what is the story? Because at the end of the day, it's all human beings relating to human beings and helping human beings, or actually being mean to human beings. But that's really what it comes down to. Well, so Gerry, you've been wonderful. You've been awesome.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure being with you. It's been my pleasure sharing stories and talking about our value system, and I look forward to the other things that you're going to come out with, whether they be books or podcasts or LinkedIn, YouTube things, or whatever they are. It's always wonderful to hear from you, and it's always good to hear your questions on our conversations that we have on a weekly basis about what's going on in the world at large, and the society, and we will continue our conversation. We will continue our dialogue, and hopefully we both grow from it and make the world a better place. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your help also. I appreciate it.
We're gonna check in on Gerry to see how your activities of actually realizing those buildings and building that community.
Yep.
So thank you.
My
I
pleasure.
just finished with, thank you, Gerry. I just finished with Gerry Rubinstein, and he is someone, if you don't know, you should actually link to on LinkedIn. And I will put him at the bottom, so, sorry, at the top, so you'll be able to make Gerry's acquaintance. Thank you.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And I find this all the time. I sit down with business owners all the time, and they always give me unsolicited advice because they want to share their knowledge, and it's really important.
Here with me is Peter Merrick,
president of merrickwealth.com.
Peter is an income and capital enhancement consultant,
speaker and author.
He is also a
recognized expert in the world of succession planning.
There's over 800 published articles and 3 industry textbooks.
He's a Canadian who joins us today from San Diego, California. Thanks for joining us.
So, Peter Merrick, tell us about you.
Well, I've been in the financial service industry since the end of 1991. I graduated during the recession. The baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs. So the 2 businesses that opened up were the technology field and the financial field. It was the Wild West in both of them. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. It was a boom time.
But in 2004, my life blew up.
I almost went bankrupt, but I was very fortunate because there were very few CFPs at the time, but every university in Canada wanted to offer the CFP program, so I got recruited as a prof. And it was great. I was reading all the textbooks. I would call all the big publishers. And what I came to the conclusion was the succession planning was missing. One of the issues is there was very little talking beyond the accumulation stage. Like, how do you have a healthy life after you've done that? I also looked at demographics. At the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old. And people are dying at 83. No one ever lived to 83.
Well, so I always say that there's 2 financial plans. There's the financial one that we work on, and there's what you get to do with all your time and that energy once you're done. And with this thing that they've been racing towards, they've hit it. But if they haven't thought about what they're going to do after or how they're going to feel validation for their existence, they just never stop. They just keep going.
Well, it's not anybody's fault because when people are young, they focus too much on doing, and later on in life, they have to focus on being. So I wrote my own textbooks because I thought it was very important to talk about how do you transition from the first half of life, which Carl Jung called it the mourning, where you're accumulating, whether it's your ego, designations, education, houses. The second half is deconstruction, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, leaving a legacy.
So talk to me about that stage. What's the purposeful way or kind of the best practices, ways, or considerations for people to take when transitioning into that stage of life?
Well, 1, decide whether or not you want an exit. I find between the ages of 55 and 70, a lot of people feel that I'm just tired doing the same thing that I've always done. And I have the money now. So maybe I should get out when the going is good and pass on my business to someone who's got the energy to navigate it. Number 2, who are you going to sell your business to? There's one issue about selling it to a family member or an employee. What happens after you sell it? Things don't go right. A lot of business owners want to sell their business because they just want to wash their hands. But by selling it to someone you know, you're not getting out of your business. The best is to sell to a third-party purchaser. The last one is after they make that transition from being a business owner, building a nest egg for themselves to have choice, they don't know what they're going to do. I've spoken to people who say, you know, I'm going to take up golf. So my question is, do you golf now? I don't golf now. So what makes you think you're going to golf later? I just want to share with you guys a story. There was a gentleman, his name was Bob Hunter. He was quite a celebrity. He started Greenpeace during the height of my blow up. When I was going through business loss, he was bringing me on national television. And you know what he was doing? He was saying, so Peter, don't you do that? And then he would give my phone number and he would give my web address. The reason why it went by merrickwealth.com, because it was almost like a phone number that would run across the television and I could actually see myself making money off of it. And he was dying. He had prostate cancer. And he turned to me and said, Peter, one day you will be in a position that you'll help someone else. And let me share with you about the legacy. Bob's been dead for 16 years. And I'm sharing you the legacy of Bob Hunter because he made a difference for me. And if I make a difference in anyone else's life, I'm a product of those people who are willing to do things and they had no expectations. And a true mentor is someone who has no expectations that they're going to see the tree blossom. The reason I wrote The King of Main Street is younger people don't know how to find the right mentors, and older people have this need to mentor. It's almost like a biological need because they can see beyond their physical existence. They know that the sun was here before them and it will be after them, and what's going to be left behind that they leave.
I would joke, I can't make you money, but I can definitely save you money. What I mean by that is I am a Sherpa. That's someone who would guide someone to help them come down. But I realize the most precious asset they have is not their money. It's their time.
What last piece of advice would you like to give our listeners?
If you have a business, the most important thing to ask yourself is, why did you get into the business? And it's usually not to create a legacy, it's to create the lifestyle that you want. And at that point, ask yourself, what do you want to do during your last days? The last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours. And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And that is going to give you fulfillment emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You guys have been wonderful, and I want to thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.